Can we get this activated? One? Yes. Why don't you ask this Reverend to come? Looks like our short break has become a long break. Okay, in this segment of our discussion, what I would like to do is to explain to you these two concepts, distribution and conversion of terms. Now, this is basically we can say exercise in logical understanding of language, but although as you can see, I'm using this modern terms. What I would like to show you is actually Kathāvatthu author, Kathāvatthu debaters are aware of these things. Okay. Now, so therefore, what I am going to say is not a new thing really. Only thing is, you know, in our tradition, we have not clearly articulated it. But you can see when you see the Kathāvatthu debate shows a knowledge about these, how to distribute and converse terms. Now if you take here, Puggalo Upalabhati, the Puggala is known. Then the second question was Upalabhati Puggaloti. So you can see the conversion, like, you know, you converse the term. Now, question is, Upalabhati Puggalota means Puggala is known, Puggalo Upalabhati are all known things Puggala, Upalabhati Puggaloti. So this is Puggalo Upalabhati. When you turn it other way around, then the meaning changes, are all known things Puggala. Now if you look at this situation, you can see two things. One is Puggala as known object. The other is all known objects in the world. So you have two categories here. One category is all the known objects in the world. All the known objects in the world. And then the other category is Pudgala as a non-object. Now, what we are going to do is try to understand the relationship between Pudgala as a non-object and all the non-objects in the world. In other words, we can say that all the non-objects in the world makes a one class, right? And then Pudgala is one member of that class. So basically it is a class and member relationship. Now when Sakavadi Paravadi dialogue, when Sakavadi puts this question and then he turns it around and asks Upalabhati Puggaloti, actually what Sakavadi asking is whether Pudgala is a member of a class of all the non-objects, or whether all the non-object is a member of the class of Pudgala. You know, that is basically the question. I mean, the answer seems to be pretty obvious, but there is the logical thinking that goes for it. So in this presentation, what I'm going to do is to make you familiar with this thinking. You know, it is important for us to be aware of, because Kathāvatthu author was aware of this. You know, that is why this question comes. So as I said earlier, the debate at this point is nothing on the points of Dhamma. There are other aspects of debate on the points of Dharma. But here the point is not the Dhamma, but point is the proper use of the language and the concepts. Now this is very relevant because you conduct a debate through language. You conduct a debate through concepts. And also the Pudgala is basically a concept. Now the debate is revolving around this concept. So some people say that this concept has a reality. Some people say that this concept doesn't have a reality. Pudgalavadin says that the concept of Pudgala has some sort of reality, and Theravadin says deny that it has that kind of reality. So ultimately the debate is conducted at the level of language and the concepts. Okay, so we need to understand how the linguistic concepts are being used. Now distribution and the conversion. So what is happening here? Okay. Now, in order to understand this, first let me introduce there are 4 different standard forms of categorical propositions. Now, you will have to get used to this terminology. There are 4 different standard forms of categorical propositions. Now, in the logical text, we use this word categorical proposition. Now, categorical proposition, when we say proposition can be interpreted basically as a statement, okay, or even a sentence. But when we use the term proposition, it has a little bit different meaning. For example, proposition has a psychological element. Now, when I say I go home, now that is how I say that in English. But in Burmese, you say differently. In my own language, I say differently. In French, they say differently. But we say the proposition is the same. Okay? Yeah. Proposition is the same. So when I say I go home, even though in different languages we say it differently, proposition is the same. So proposition is, we can say, basic idea or basic concepts we have about something. So the idea I go home, we can say in so many different languages, in so many different ways, but the proposition remains the same. Now when we say categorical proposition, categorical means definitive propositions. Now, in the categorical proposition, the characteristic of categorical proposition is when we make a categorical proposition, we know what we are saying, we know what we are saying, we know what we are talking about, and also we know what we are saying about that. Okay? Now we know the subject matter very clearly, and also we know what we are saying about that subject matter. So in that sense, these are called categorical propositions. So in logical language, we have 4 different categorical propositions. They are called universal affirmative, universal negative, particular affirmative, particular negative. Now for the easy use, these are called universal affirmative propositions are called A propositions, universal negative E propositions, particular affirmative I propositions, and particular negative O proposition, A, E, I, O. So E and O propositions are negative, A and I propositions are positive propositions. Okay. These propositions are traditionally named A, E, I, O, coming from Latin affirm, affirmo, and nego. Affirm A, and then FFI, number 3, so affirm. Nego means I deny in Latin language. So the nego in E, number 2, and O, number 4. Affirmo, and nego. I affirm and I deny. So in that sense, propositions are given these names. But if you look at the proposition, you can see they are pretty simple. The first proposition talks about all, whatever. We say example is all politicians, all. And then number 2, universal negative, no politicians are liars. Now both are called universal. Universal means whatever we are talking about the entire category of that. Now when we talk about the all politicians, we are talking about all politicians, right? It includes all the politicians. Now that is why it is universal. Universal means it applicable to all the members of that particular category. If you take the politicians as one class, so whatever it is said applicable to all the members of that class. When we say all politicians are liars, so if anyone is a politician, then he is a liar according to this statement, right? So being liar is applicable to all the politicians. That's why it's called universal. And affirmative means whether sentence is affirmative, sentence says something about affirms something. Then look at the number 2, universal negative. It says no politicians are liars. Now in that sentence, when we say no politicians are liars, again we are talking about the entire class of politicians. And we say none of them is a liar. So that's the opposite of the number 1. But then there again we are talking about the universal. We are talking about all the politicians. And then we say all the politicians are not liars. So then that is a universal, but that is negative. Because we are talking about something that they are not. So universal affirmative and universal negative. Number 3 is particular affirmative. There we are talking about some politicians. Whenever you say some, we are not talking about all. We are talking about a particular members of some group or some class, not about the entire class. So we say some politicians are liars, and then the negative of that is some politicians are not liars. So there again we are talking about the limited group of people who belong to that particular thing. So these are called standard categorical propositions, A, E, I, O, and then universal affirmative, universal negative, particular affirmative and particular negative. Now, in these statements, we are talking about quality and also quantity. Now, remember these two concepts related to categorical propositions. When we talk about categorical propositions, we are talking about quality of. Now, the quality means either categorical proposition is affirmative or negative. Okay? Either they are affirmative or negative. That is the quality. Now, if you ask about the quality of the categorical proposition, there are two qualities. Either any proposition is affirmative, they say something affirmative, affirm something, or negate something. Now, when you say all politicians are liars, we affirm something. When we say no politicians are liars, we negate something. So, therefore, quality is affirmative or negative. Of these propositions mentioned above, number 1 and 3 are affirmative. The other two are negative. So, 1 is all politicians are liars. 3 is some politicians are liars. Okay. So, affirmative. Then other two are negative. Number 2 is no politicians are liars. Number 4 is some politicians are liars. Not liars. So, we have negative. Then we have another thing called quantity of the proposition. Now, quantity is either propositions are universal or the propositions are particular. So, universal means when we are talking about all members of a particular class, we are using the word universal. So, universal has a very specific meaning. Universal categorical proposition means we are talking about all the members of that class. Okay, that's universal. And then particular. Particular means we are talking about only some members of that class. So, of this provision 1 and 2 apply to all members. When we say all politicians are liars and no politicians are liars, we are talking about the entire group of politicians. The other two apply only to some members. When we say some politicians are liars and some politicians are not liars, we are talking about some particular. Now, so the quantity is universal or particular. Quality is affirmative or negative. Quantifying terms or quantifiers are all, no, some. Quantifying terms, so all is a quantifying term. No is a quantifying term. Some is a quantifying term. Or we use the word quantifier. All is a quantifier. No is a quantifier. Some is a quantifier. So quantify, you quantify means, you give the measurement, you give the number. So we call quantifying terms. Universal propositions are indicated by all or no. Particular propositions by some or any similar terms. Okay. Now, is that clear? So, we are talking about 4 categorical propositions. These 4 categorical propositions are either affirmative or negative, or universal or particular. They are either universal or particular. Either they refer to all members of a class or some members of a class. Or they are affirmative or they are negative. Now, these are the basic ideas you should remember when we try to do this logical exercise. Now we talk about the distribution. Distribution refers to the ways in which the terms occur in categorical proposition. So distribution refers to the ways in which terms occur in categorical propositions. Now, a proposition distributes a term if it refers to all members of the class designated by that term. Now, the idea of distribution means, now we can say a proposition distributes a term if it refers to all members of the class designated by that term. For example, a proposition distributes its subject term but not its predicate term. Now, this kind of proposition has subject and predicate. Now, grammatically, I think in simple grammar, this is a pretty simple thing. We will get rid of this we can say all liars. Now in this sentence, this part is called subject. This part is called predicate. Okay. Now this is a proposition. Now in a proposition, distribute, it is subject term. Distribute is subject term, but does not distribute, it is predicate term. So distribute means it is applicable to all members. So when we say all politicians, it distributes the subject. But of course, it does not distribute the predicate term, liar, which means the liar category is not distributed, means in that category, we are not talking about all liars. Okay? Now in this sentence, we are talking about all politicians, but not all liars. Now simply we can say all politicians are liars, but because all politicians is distributed, but liar is not. So therefore, because liar is not distributed, we cannot say all liars are politicians. Why? We cannot say. Can we say all liars are politicians? Why not? Why we cannot say all liars are not politicians? Why? Use your brain, use your thinking. It's pretty simple. No, because simply there are many other liars also, apart from politicians. No, simply there are many other liars, apart from politicians. So we can say a proposition distribute is subject term, but not it is predicate term, right? Okay. Now, if you say, for example, all dogs are animals, they are dogs distributed, but animals not distributed. We can say all dogs are animals, but all animals are not dogs, right? Yeah. That's pretty clear, because there are many other types of animals. So you can see the concept of distribution. So in a proposition, subject is distributed, but not the predicate is not distributed. That's the idea. E proposition distribute both subject and predicate term. Now we say no athletes are vegetarians. We can also say no vegetarians are athletes. Now because this interestingly E proposition is a negative proposition in that both subject and predicate terms are distributed. When we say no athletes are vegetarians, we are talking about all the vegetarians and all the athletes. So when we say no, actually, no athletes are vegetarians, if that is true, no vegetarians are athletes. So in that context, both are distributed, right? But on the other hand, if we make it a proposition, if we say all athletes are vegetarian, then we cannot say all vegetarians are athletes, because there are others who are vegetarian. But in E proposition, it is a negative proposition. When we say no athletes are vegetarians, there we can say no vegetarians are athletes. So there you can see both subject and predicate terms are distributed. In I propositions, both subject and predicate are undistributed. So in I propositions, neither is distributed. We can say some soldiers are cowards. This proposition does not refer to all the soldiers or to all cowards. Neither class is wholly included or excluded. Now in I proposition, neither is distributed. When you say some soldiers are cowards, it talks about only some soldiers. And also it doesn't refer to all the cowards in the world. It talks about the only soldiers who are cowards. So neither subject term nor predicate term is distributed in there. But on the other hand, neither is excluded either. When you say some soldiers are cowards, some soldiers belong in the class of cowards, some cowards belong in the class of soldiers, right? Both are the. So if we, it's something like this. We have, so we can say this is soldiers, this is cowards. So here we have both soldiers and cowards. But both are much larger. Only some soldiers are cowards. Only some cowards are soldiers. So nothing is distributed. Only one segment is coincide with both. Is that clear? Okay. So we will move to the O proposition. Distribute, it is predicate term but not it is subject term. We say some dogs are not German shepherds. It refers only to some dogs. So dogs is not distributed but refers to all German shepherds. So when we say some dogs are not German shepherds, can we say some German shepherds are not dogs? No, because all German shepherds are dogs. But not all dogs are German shepherd. German shepherd, as you know, is a kind of, one type of dogs. So when we say some dogs are not German shepherds, that's a O proposition. It refers only to some dogs. So O proposition distribute, it is predicate term, but not the subject term. Because predicate term here is are not German shepherds. So that is distributed means that refers to all the German shepherds. However, the subject term is not distributed, so it doesn't refer to all the dogs. Now this is basically the idea of distribution, how you can distribute. Now if you are now familiar with these four kinds of propositions, then you can see which part is applicable to all the members of that class and which part is applicable to only some members of that class. Okay. Now, we will move to the last one. Conversion. Conversion is to interchange subject and predicate terms of a categorical proposition. Now, conversion means to interchange subject and predicate terms of a categorical proposition. In E proposition, both subject both subject and predicate are interchangeable. We say no men are angels, we say no angels are men. Same thing, when we say no athletes are vegetarians, we can say no vegetarians are athletes. So in a E proposition, both can be interchangeable, right? Now, in I proposition, both subject and predicate terms are interchangeable. Some writers are women, some women are writers. So you can interchange both. You can say some writers are women, same meaning you can say some women are writers. However, in A proposition, conversion is not valid. You can't convert, change the place of A proposition. Example is, we can say all dogs are animals, but we cannot say all animals are dogs. Why? Because, when we say all dogs are animals, we talk about all dogs. But animals part is not distributed. So we don't talk about all animals. Right? Because we don't talk about all animals, we can't talk about, so we can't convert that term. Although we can say all dogs are animals, we cannot say all animals are dogs. Again, if you have, this as animals. Now this whole is a class of animals. Now we have dogs. We can have cats. We can have horses. And there are many others. So you can see, in a pretty simple manner, this big circle cannot be put in this small circle, right? But this small circle can be put in this big circle. That's another way to see. So A proposition's conversion is not valid. In O proposition, the conversion is not valid either. We say some dogs are not German shepherds, but you can't say some German shepherds are not dogs. Right? So the conversion is not valid. So you have to understand, out of these 4 categorical propositions, there are 2 where conversion is valid, there are 2 conversion is not valid. Okay? Now this is basically the 2 idea, distribution and conversion. Okay? Now let me take you back again and bring you quickly. So these are the 4 propositions. Universal affirmative, universal negative, particular affirmative, particular negative. So basically propositions. And then we have in these propositions quality, that means either they are affirmative or they are negative, or quantity, they are either universal or particular. Quantifying terms are like all, no, some. Universal propositions indicated by all or no, particular proposition by usually by some. And then we go to distribution. Distribution refers to the ways in which terms occur in categorical proposition. A proposition distribute a term if it refers to all members of a class. A proposition distribute a term if it refers to all members. So distributing means it refers to all members, right? So whenever we have a sentence all, we know that it has been. So a proposition distributes subject but not the predicate. All dogs are animals, dogs distributed, animals not distributed. So although we can say all dogs are animals, we cannot say all animals are dogs. E proposition distribute both and say no athletes are vegetarians, no vegetarians are athletes. In I proposition, both subject and predicate are undistributed. We say some soldiers are cowards. The proposition does not refer to all soldiers, no to or to all cowards. Neither class is wholly excluded. When we say some soldiers are cowards, we can talk about some cowards are soldiers. But it doesn't talk about it's not distributed. It doesn't talk about all soldiers. It doesn't talk about all cowards. In all propositions, distribute is predicate term, but not it is subject term. So it is predicate term is distributed, but not the subject term. We say some dogs are not German shepherd, but we cannot say some German shepherds are not dogs. And then we come to the conversion. Now conversion is to interchange. So E proposition, both subject and predicate are interchangeable. No men are angels, no angels are men. No athletes are vegetarians, no vegetarians are athletes, like that. E proposition, both subject and predicate terms are interchangeable. Some writers are women, some women are writers. In A proposition, conversion is not valid. We can't converse. In no proposition, the conversion is not valid. Some dogs are not German shepherd, but we cannot say some German shepherds are not dogs. Okay, now the important thing is how does it help us to understand what we are discussing. Now here we had the question was, are all known things puggala? Upalabbhati puggalo, puggalo upalabbhati iti. Look at this sentence. All puggalas are known. Now, what is the category of this sentence? What kind of sentence is this? This is a proposition. This is universal affirmative. This is a universal affirmative statement. We talk about all puggalas. And then this is the subject. And this is the predicate. Now we say in A proposition, conversion is not valid. We can say all dogs are animals. We can say all pudgalas are known. But can we say all known are pudgalas? No. We cannot say all known are pudgalas. In other words, we can say puggalo upalabbati, but can we say upalabbati puggalo? No. But then only thing is, in Pali language, the sentence is not given in all or some, But that is the way it has been presented in Pali language. But if we reconstruct the statement in this manner, then you can see the logic. Is that clear to you? So the whole problem is when the Sakavadi asks from Paravadi, Puggalo upalabbati puggaloti, actually his conversion is not valid, right? But then the interesting thing is, Paravadi quickly realizes that this is logically wrong. Okay? Now that's why I say that, in the Kathāvatthu, you can see that, Kathāvatthu is debating based on the certain logical principles. So but on the other hand, in the Buddhist tradition, we don't talk about the conversion or distribution because, those logical aspects were not developed very much. And then usually, Kathāvatthu is not studied by many people anyway. So, not too many people know about it. But when you read it carefully, you can see that Kathāvatthu author, now we are talking about at least 3rd century BCE, long time ago, but you can see that whole debate is conducted based on logical principles. So here, simple thing is we can say all pudgalas are known, are all known, we say objects pudgalas. Now for this question, Paravadi says, no, nahevang mattabbe. Why? Because logically you can explain in a proposition, conversion is not valid. You can't convert it, simply. Now, when you look at that kind of diagram, you can see why conversion is not valid. Because, you can't put a class within a member, but you can put a member within a class. Or you can put a smaller circle within a bigger circle, but you can't put a bigger circle within a smaller circle. Pretty simple, something like that. Okay, now I just wanted to explain these particular two concepts to you so that you can understand, the logical principles sometimes, discussed in these things. I know that some of you express your view that, these logical principles are, kind of hard or difficult. But I would say they are not that difficult, when you get used to it. But thinking in this line helps you to understand better what is going on, okay? What is going on in the debate. Then simply, here you can see both opponent and the proponent, Sakavadi and Paravadi, are aware of this logical principle, aware of the limitation of the language. The limits of the language. Okay, folks, I think, I hope this is helpful to you. I will wind up the discussion from here for today. Do you have any questions or any comments? Do you have any difficulty with this conversion and distribution concepts? Of course, I'm sorry, I don't have any extra readings, but you can you can use my presentation. If you want to download or something, you can use it.
Please explain again universal community and universal community.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Universal in particular.
Okay. Explain again.
Yeah, these are basically, we can say, any kind of proposition belongs in here, categorical proposition. But that doesn't mean that every sentence in language is these things, okay? But we must be able to translate or construct some sentences like this, Upalabbati Puggalo, Puggalo Upalabbati is not given in this form. But we can translate into that form. Then we will see the logical form of the sentence, right? Otherwise, when you say Puggalo Upalabbati, Upalabbati Puggalo, it is not very clear. But when you put it this way, all Pudgalas are known, Puggalo Upalabbati. All known objects are all known, there are again here, but are all known objects Pudgala? Now this is the conversion. Now we can say no, conversion is not valid. Now according to this analysis, we can simply say that if you recognize this as a proposition, then you know that conversion is not valid. So these are kind of technical way to think. But on the other hand, when we think rationally, also we can see that. But these concepts like class, member, part, whole are useful to understand these relations. Does that help? So even in my future presentations, discussions, I will highlight, whenever this kind of, because there is some more, I'm not going to make special presentations, but we can see there are many more logical concepts being used in the Kathāvatthu. Okay? So, any other questions? Everything is so clear. If you need this presentation, I can leave it with so that you can download it, because I don't have a text for you to read, but just to understand this, I think this would be enough. Okay, in the absence of any questions or comments, I will wind up for today, and in our next session is going to be on next week on we start from Nagarjuna, and then we will move it again. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.